What's up, guys? This video is going to recap the Pong project so far. We made one circle that moves with physics and one rectangle that moves with controls, and every once in a while they collide. The next step will be to add another rectangle for two-player or a bunch of rectangles for breakout, but today we're going to recap how we got to this point. And this is what you start with when you open up a blank project on CodeHS. They've got pretty much everything we need. We got object on screen, it has position, and it has a thing that it does every frame. We just have to change what that is. So instead of set color every frame, we're going to set position and give it a new X and Y coordinate. But actually, there's an even more convenient method called move. So you can go ball.move, and instead of having to base your position on the old one and calculate where the new one is, you can just say, hey, move this much. So for example, if you say 3, 3, then it'll move 3 horizontal and 3 vertical. And when we try to run this, we're going to see, hey, that looks terrible. It's slow and choppy, and that's because the frame rate is really bad. It's only moving 2.5 times per second. So let's see what we can do here. The set timer thing says give me a function and a delay. I think they call it delay. And so it calls this function every X milliseconds. I'm going to change this to 10 because we've used that for some of our other animations and it seems perfectly fine. So if I run this, hey, nice, smooth, and yeah, it flies off screen, but we're about to change it so that it will bounce. Now another thing we got to change is the name. It was called paintball, and that's not true. It doesn't paint the ball anymore. So I'm going to make it something more generic. I'm going to call it update, because that's the thing you do every frame, regardless of what we add later. If we have it move other stuff, we don't have to change the name, because update is very general. Okay, I'm going to hit run again just to make sure I didn't mess it up. And now we're going to say, let's do a bit of bounce. Okay, so collide with boundaries. If it hits the right, it goes toward the middle. If it hits top or bottom, whatever, it does the same. So we're going to go if ball.x, which is really the properties we're going to use are x, y, and radius. And they mean exactly what you think they mean. And we've also used them before when we did the squash and stretch of the gravity bouncy ball thing. So ball.x plus ball.radius, because we don't want the middle to hit something, we want the outside perimeter of the ball, is greater than width. Wait a minute, we don't have width. Let's create that. So we're also getting a red squiggle. This one says parentheses expected. Let's do it. Okay, so here's the thing. They have these functions called get width and get height, and you can call them to get the dimensions of the canvas. But I would feel bad calling these like thousands of times with the same answer every time, right? So I'm just going to call them once and say, hey, the get width, whatever we got, we're going to call that width. And the get height, whatever we got, we're going to call that height. And then every frame, when we need to look at those values, we don't need to call the functions over and over. So I'm going to say const width equals this guy. And const, oh my gosh, my hand is in the wrong spot on the keyboard, equals this guy. And then we can use those here, and then we can use those down here, and all the other times where you might need to check the extent of the canvas, This is a lot of programs. They'll have like constants at the top for like the max size or the maximum amount of things you can have on screen, whatever. So what happens if the x plus the radius is more than the edge? We're going to change not move now, but we're going to change how much you move next frame. So how do we do that? We need to give it a name. So what's the name of how much you move? Usually that's called velocity. So let's create some variables. You could make it part of the ball, like ball dot velocity or whatever, but I'm just going to make it separate. down here, we're going to go x velocity is, so like if I hit the right side, I need to go leftward. And there's an issue where it's kind of nice to do times -1 so that it would just flip. And then it's kind of the same thing on all directions. But you have a chance of doing that, and then the very next frame, you're not quite out yet, so you flip it again and it cancels out, and you have to be slightly more careful. So instead, I'm just going to say, you hit the wall, you're going left. Okay? But guess what? We're not using those velocities yet, so we need to put them in here. I'm taking advantage of my autocomplete, so I just hit like XV tab and it fills in the rest. So let's run this and see if it bounces. Hey, look at that, it bounced off the wall. So now I'm going to do a little copy paste and try this for the other boundaries. Now, we're not going to keep them all, right? In the final game, you don't have a wall at your back, because if you miss, it flies past you. But for the moment, we're going to put all 4. So x minus will be the other side, so that's less than 0. And this is positive. And then y plus height is comparing to all the way down. Remember, y velocity or y anything starts at 0 at the top, so it goes down. And then y minus compared to 0. Let's try that. Should be doing all. Yeah, beautiful. Love it. This can go forever unless something really gets thrown off. Great. Which one of these are we going to change? Well, we're going to put the paddle on a side, and then we're going to take off the one that is that side. So that would be this one, right? Oh, I put the hashtag because that's a comment in Python. To do, replace with paddle. So now we know when we do the paddle, we go back to this one. And when I say when we do the paddle, I mean right now, because that's what we're going to add. So let's add new rectangle. And you give it width and height, and I'm just making up numbers, but that seems fine. Now the ball, that does seem fine actually, but the ball looks too big, so I'm going to shrink it a bit. Should we make these constants at the top? Maybe. Yeah, it's okay, sure. So now let's give it a position. Maybe like 10 away, pretty close to the edge. And then it doesn't really matter where we start because we're about to move it horizontally, but height over 2. Height over 2 is not really in the middle because this top left corner is how you refer to the rectangle, so it's kind of in the bottom half, but it's fine. Okay, let's move it. It's something I do a lot. Look at the docs. So I'm going to go Control F, keyboard, there we go. Okay, so turns out the key stuff works very similar to the timer stuff because you give it a function and it calls it when the time comes. Now for this, you give it a function, it calls it every X milliseconds. Now for this, you give it a function and it calls it when a key is pressed. But it's the same idea. So we're going to do something kind of like this. Look, their example is arrows and moving, so it's really similar. And then we have this trigger that goes at the moment of button press. So just like this one, we called it update, which is very generic. I think for this one, we'll call it key down, because right now it's moving, but maybe later it'll pause or do whatever. So you don't want to call it move paddle, and then you use it for pausing, and then you have a function with the confusing name. So let's go key down, and then they right here have a thing called E, which stands for event, but I'm going to give it the full word, because if I see E, I don't really know what that means. So their example is something like this, and yes, that means I have to change right here, and then when the thing is called arrow left, you can be pretty confident in assuming that arrow up is a real thing. And then, is that right? Let's try it. We can't try it until we do this though, so let's do this. And it's not doing it. What's going on? So it says ball.move. Maybe it was moving the ball. It was moving it, but it's paddle, okay? This is the danger of copy pasting, because they had a thing and I should have changed it, but I didn't. So now if I hit up, hey, look at that, it's going up. So I want to do the other way. I'm going to make these one-liners, because when you see the pattern of like 2 in a row, it's nice to see them line up. And when they're really short if statements, kind of works this way, but you don't want to do that too often. So let's go down and then positive. Okay, up. Now it looks like they collide, but they don't yet. And yes, you can go off screen, but you can come back down. Beautiful. You can change the pace. You don't want to make it too fast, because it feels out of control, like you're flying all over, and it also might make the game too easy. The strategy is sort of like tennis, where if we're all the way up here and then we have to go all the way down here, then it's a race against time, and we want to make our guy kind of slow to make it tense, you know? All right, now let's make him collide. Let's say, okay, collide with paddle. Okay, how can we do that? We can check a point. So like right here, we were checking the left side of the ball, or I guess part of it. We just did the X and not the Y. And we could say, is that contained within this rectangle? So is it between the top and bottom and between the left and right? And that would be a bunch of less than, greater than. Kind of annoying. And guess what? We don't need it, because they have a convenient method called collide point. So if we say, hey, does this point collide with the rectangle? It'll do the less than, greater than, horizontal, vertical stuff. So we can go if paddle dot, wait, it's called contains, not collide. Ball dot x minus ball dot radius, because it's this guy, the one that we commented earlier, and ball dot y, and this is telling us we need parentheses, thank you, squiggle, and then we do the same as this, you know? And then I'm gonna say that whole line, I'm gonna keep it just in case, but we'll turn it into a comment, okay? So now we're gonna go, hey, look at that, it bounced off the paddle, beautiful, but if I miss, it's gone, okay, it's gone off screen. Now here's where it gets interesting, right? This is the game, this is Pong. You play it, you bounce, and then when it's off, you're dead. But come on, we need a little more than that. So you could just say game over, you're done. You could say fancy text on screen, whatever, but what I want to do is just bring it back to the middle and start over. So let's see if we can do that. Nothing too crazy, but every time I say that, then I go, ooh, add more, add more, add more, so we have to restrain ourselves. Let's say I'm gonna bring the guy back to the middle when it's far to the left. Okay, so if ball.x is less than, not 0, because if it's less than 0, then it just like instantly reappears. Way too fast for you to react. Let's say like -200, so it's like, it's flying off screen a little bit. Then ball.x equals width over 2. Okay, see what happens. Okay, so I'm gonna just let it fly, and then it appears way too fast, right? Because you don't know exactly where it's going to be, and you don't know which direction it's going to be, because maybe it bounced when it was off screen and now it's going down instead of up or whatever. So this is terrible. It's good because you can keep going, and so like if it flies off, whatever, I can always get another chance. But it's terrible, like if you actually were playing and keeping score, this would be reaction test and not anything more. So let's do a little bit of like pause, like it's there and then it goes. So like you just wait a second. And this is what I showed in class, and yes, it's more than you need. You could stop here, okay? You could stop right here, but if you want to make it pretty and have it have some quality of life features that people will go, oh, this is nice, then let's give it a shot. So I'm going to make it reappear and then just pause for a second and then move. So let's say I'm going to make a timer. Timer is a number, it counts down. When it hits 0, you move. Okay, so what are we going to do here? I'm going to make 2 functions. One of them, go to the middle, freeze. Another one, start moving. And we'll use those at the beginning of the game and every time you die. So multiple, okay? So what that means is we're already doing most of it because it was already there for the beginning of the game. So I'm going to go initialize. That's a classic word used in game engines and stuff to mean, hey, we're going to set things up. We're not starting yet, but we're setting things up. And it could be shortened to init, or you could use a word like setup, totally fine. Then we're going to have a function. I'm just going to call it go, where it's like, okay, we've done the countdown, whatever, now start moving. Okay, so what's in there? Well, this is in there, right? Oh, I guess we do want the semicolons, but not the let, because these functions are not the owner of these names. And we'll come back to that in a second. So initialize, it's going to be this, and I am going to cut from here, actually. And let's see, what else do we do? We're going to give them a 0 velocity. Boop, boop. And actually, that's kind of it. Like, they're just going to sit there for a second. Now, we have to do this countdown timer thing. How do we do that? We're just going to make a number. Let countdown. Actually, the way I did it in class, and I think it's fine, is to have 2 variables as like countdown mode, like are we counting down, yes or no, and then countdown timer. So at the beginning, well, you know what? They don't even have a value. You can declare things with let or var. I guess not with const, that wouldn't make sense. But you can declare things and not give them a value and just say, hey, there's going to be something. Okay. And so we're going to say in the initialize, countdown mode is true, and then countdown timer is 100. And it's going to count down. Okay. And then when you go, countdown mode is false. And the timer, we probably don't need to do anything with it, but just see what happens. So, are these doing anything? No. Let's call, I mean, they're ready, but they haven't been fired up yet. So at the beginning, we're going to initialize. And then it feels like these should go down there as well. Because this is like, hey, this is all the work we're doing at the beginning of the game. You know, looks good, looks good. Oh, oh, okay, okay, okay. Great. It's not moving yet. We got to do the timer thing, but that's great. And I'm going to change one more thing, which is that this little section down here, now that it's growing and it has a purpose and it has like a group of things that all fit together, it's nice to give it a name, and I'm going to call it start. And the reason is because we've been doing that for months. The start thing in Carol the dog and in these animations is a magic name where they're going to call start automatically, unlike all the other ones that we have to call ourselves. So if I hit run, it should do nothing, okay? And now we're going to finally do the timer thing. So if ball is less than 200, we don't worry about the details, we just say initialize, because it already has the details, okay? So reset if off screen, and then count. I'm gonna call this fade in, because in a minute you'll see why. So we're gonna say if countdown mode, boop. Oh my gosh, the wrong bracket. If we're in countdown mode, if not, we just keep going, right? Like this update loop happens all the time, no matter what mode we're in. So most of the time it's going to say, okay, just move on. If we're in countdown mode, then countdown timer goes down by 1. That's minus equal 1. And most of the time that's it. But if that is hitting 0, I'm going to go less than 0, because I'm always afraid, like, what if it misses the 0 and it goes past 0 and then it's stuck negative forever? Especially if we decide to change this later and go down by different chunks. But you never know. Oop. If, what's going on with the keyboard? Okay. Then what do? We say go, right? Because we already made the go function that's like, hey, do the thing. So it should say, oh, look at that. We pause for a second. And that's great because when you lose, it's back. And you get a chance to catch your breath. Say, hey, wait, what's going on here? And then it moves. And the only problem is it hangs for too long. It's like, what? Is it frozen? Is it dead? Should I start over? And so we need to give the user a little visual indication, like 3, 2, 1. Yes, there's a moment of suspense, but it's not frozen. Don't worry, you're about to move. And again, you don't need all this, but I'm doing it for fun because I think it's interesting. And when you play it, when you actually test your creation, if you have any kind of taste, you're going to want it to be good, right? So let's say I'm going to make it change a tiny bit. I want the user to see that it's slightly different than it was last frame, and I know that something's happening. And what I'm going to do is just fade in the color. So it's like white, gray, darker gray, and then black, and then we're good. And I already have a timer that's counting from 100 to 0, and I can use that to scale the gray business. Sounds good to me. So I'm going to go ball.setColor, and then I'm going to make a little function to handle this because it's just slightly ugly. Grayscale of countdown timer. And then I'm going to just make a little function to do that. And then it's going to get a number from 1 to 100, or 0 to 100, I guess. And so I'm going to call that percentage because this doesn't care that it's a timer, right? It's just a number. So it could be coming from a timer, or it could be something else later. Maybe we have like a ghost ball and we give it a 30%, opacity. So I'm not going to call it timer. I'm going to call it something more generic. How do they do colors? Well, on here we have, I'm going to search for hexes. Okay, so this is what I was showing somebody earlier. You can do the color as just a name, so they just have preset, red, green, blue, whatever. You can do a string, and this string is hexadecimal. This is max red, lowish green, highish blue. Or you could do it with 3 integers, and that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm going to say, okay, return new color, and this is going to be a new color every frame. Slightly darker, slightly darker, slightly darker, slightly darker. Of what? Well, when it's grayscale, when it's black and white, the red, green, blue are even. They're flattened out, the same as each other. So we only need a single number. And what is that number? Well, it's going to be something between 0 and 255, okay? Because that's 1 byte. So I'm going to go let value equals percentage times 2.55, right? Because it's like times 255 divided by 100. We could do that if you just want to make it more obvious. And then we're going to go value. I know this looks silly, but we need it 3 times for the red, green, and blue. Okay, and then watch this. It fades in, and you know that you can wait because you know it's coming back to life. It looks fresh. It looks, love it. Oh, I missed it slightly, but now I see it fade in. And now in the moment when it's like half gray, I'm not worried. I'm not saying, oh, is it frozen? Is it, I go, look at that, it looks good, okay. And so I get a second to catch my breath. And all we had to do was add a little function with 2 lines. Do you have to do that? No. Can you change it? Of course. Different colors, text 3, 2, 1. You could have it like slowly fall from the heavens. You could have whatever you want, or you could have nothing and just make it teleport back, and it's fine. But I wanted to show something. And what is this? It's like 70 lines, but not really, because a lot of them are blanks or brackets or comments. And this is pretty similar to the example text that, or the example code that I posted on Classroom, but of course it's a little bit different because I'm thinking of different things, or I'm not answering questions, or maybe I just am in a different mood. So yours does not have to be exactly, but it definitely needs a ball that moves with physics, a rectangle that moves with control, an interaction between them, and then something that happens when it goes off screen. Simple, just end the game, teleport it back, or complicated, change the color, 3, 2, 1, keep score, whatever. In a future video, I'll show how we add a second player with another rectangle, and then I'll show how to add a breakout game with a bunch of rectangles. Thanks.